The observation deck shimmered with the cold light of distant stars, panels flickering with streams of data that mapped every fold of Earth's atmosphere, every tectonic tremor, every flash of civilization. From their vantage, the planet was fragile, a fragile blue gem adrift in a void that should have rendered it insignificant. Yet as the alien scholars monitored, an anomaly pulsed beneath the oceans, forests, and sprawling cities, a force they could not calculate, could not contain. The first signals arrived like faint ripples across the galactic network, warnings of an approaching interstellar coalition, a fleet of metal and fire intent on conquest. Alien sensors recorded the human reaction with detached curiosity. Panic should have spread, fear should have fractured the fragile societies. Instead, humans moved with an elegance that defied logic. Soldiers, engineers, and civilians merged into a singular organism, their steps choreographed in ways no algorithm could predict. Evacuation routes lit with precision, emergency services mobilized with uncanny efficiency, and human eyes, wide with terror, still held clarity of purpose. Then came the bombardments. Cities screamed in fire, smoke clawing at the sky, glass and stone torn asunder. And yet the humans did not flee blindly. They adapted, improvising defenses amid crumbling streets, striking back with weapons that seemed almost instinctual. Fires were met with water, barricades, and coordinated counterattacks. Civilians carried the wounded through chaos. Engineers rerouted power to protect hospitals. Soldiers advanced despite heat and shrapnel. Rage, human rage, was no longer emotion. It was strategy. It was creation. It was survival. The alien scholars' systems shivered under the strain of observation. Data models failed. Predictions shattered. The humans, these weak creatures, channeled fury into resilience, bending the very probability of survival. Each flare of fire, each scream and shout, each defiance of death struck the aliens not with comprehension but with awe. And as the skies above Earth roared with fire, as the planet itself seemed to writhe in agony, a chilling realization settled over the observation deck. These humans were not merely defending, they were rewriting the rules of life and death itself. The alien fleet, confident in its supremacy, paused, unready for what was to come. A single thought echoed through the minds of the scholars, unspoken but undeniable. They had never understood true human rage. The alien fleets glided into orbit, hulls gleaming with precision, engines humming a song of inevitability. Automated drones detached in synchronized arcs, descending toward human cities like predatory swarms. Calculations, simulations, probabilities all predicted total annihilation. Yet, as the first waves of destruction struck, something unquantifiable happened. Humans adapted. Buildings shattered under the mechanical onslaught, glass rained down in a chaotic mosaic, and streets cracked beneath the weight of alien armor. And yet, where any rational model predicted despair, humans built resistance. Rubble became fortifications. Overturned vehicles served as barricades. Broken drones were hacked mid-flight, reprogrammed to turn against their masters. Each act of improvisation defied the cold logic of the invaders. Alien sensors blinked in confusion as humans, wounded and terrified, orchestrated counterattacks with a precision that seemed preternatural. In one ravaged district, a single squad, a handful of humans, emerged from the smoke, their movements fluid, purposeful. They struck the armored battalion with ingenuity. Explosive traps detonated in synchronized bursts. Energy pulses disrupted targeting arrays, and flamethrowers carved pathways through mechanized ranks. The aliens' recording systems stuttered. The squad's survival odds were infinitesimal, yet they pressed on, driven by a force no algorithm could model. Every death was a spark, every injury a lesson. The scholars observed a pattern forming, not of chaos, but of adaptive intelligence. Human resilience was not brute force. It was creativity, intuition, and courage fused into action. Cities that should have been reduced to ash became networks of resistance.
Survivors scavenged debris, salvaged power, and coordinated strikes from the shadows. The streets, now empty to sensors, throbbed with a hidden life. As night fell, fires illuminated shattered skylines, reflecting in alien eyes like molten gold. The humans, exhausted and bleeding, did not surrender. They did not despair. Instead, they planned. Each signal, each movement, each whispered command hinted at the next phase of defiance. The aliens, masters of war and strategy, realized that this species, fragile, unpredictable, and illogical, would not simply endure. They would rise. And in the orbital silence, the scholars understood the terrifying truth. Destruction alone could never contain humanity. From the cold expanse of orbit, the alien analysts expected predictability. Every model, every calculation, every projection suggested the humans would falter under the relentless assault of superior technology, superior strategy, and the precision of fleets bred for domination. Yet, as the drones tore through the outer suburbs and mechanized battalions advanced, they encountered not chaos, but adaptation, an intelligence that no algorithm could anticipate. Human cities, already scarred and smoldering, became crucibles of invention. Survivors scoured the rubble for anything remotely functional: wires, metals, scrap circuitry, batteries, and broken alien tech. Within hours, makeshift energy shields shimmered over key positions, powered by scavenged generators and repurposed technology, blocking the drones' targeting systems.
Rooftops transformed into command stations. Alleyways became choke points, wired with traps designed not by generals, but by civilians, by children, by those with nothing left to lose but everything to defend. Every assault met with a countermeasure so precise that the aliens' neural networks could not calculate the probability of success. Observation revealed guerrilla tactics of breathtaking sophistication. Humans moved as shadows, disappearing from one sector only to emerge in another, attacking where least expected, vanishing again before retaliation could arrive. Communication signals intercepted by alien systems revealed a startling truth. Humans trusted one another implicitly, coordinated complex operations in real time, and demonstrated self-sacrifice in ways their records could barely quantify. One signal detailed a small team rerouting a city's energy grid to disable approaching drones, fully aware the overload would collapse half the infrastructure and half their own forces, but they executed the plan flawlessly. To the aliens, such behavior bordered on madness, yet it achieved results. The collective intelligence of these humans was unlike anything the aliens had ever cataloged. It was improvisational, adaptive, and unchained by doctrine. They fought not for conquest, not for domination, not for political gain. No human map or ledger could capture their motives. They fought for survival, for one another, for the planet itself, that fragile orb of blue and green spinning in the black void. The aliens, trained to prioritize efficiency, control, and predictability, could only watch, awestruck, as humans weaponized vulnerability, as weakness transformed into strength, as improvisation became their most potent artillery. Entire sectors fell under siege, and yet human fortifications emerged anew each day, each iteration more cunning, more efficient, more unassailable than the last. Drones captured on video circuits were reprogrammed mid-battle, turned against their original commanders. Alien battle formations, thought unbreakable, collapsed under the ingenuity of human traps, ambushes, and feints. One recorded incident showed a single squad redirecting a flood of armored units into a canyon filled with improvised explosives. The alien sensors captured every detonation, every disoriented retreat, every fractured strategy. The sheer inventiveness, chaotic, fluid, and unpredictable, defied the very logic the aliens had used to dominate every other known species. By the time the first alien command ship faltered, systems crippled by an intricate network of sabotage, the observers no longer felt detached curiosity. Awe had overtaken them. Every report referred to humans as a living storm of creativity and will, a force unbound by conventional strategy,
one that transformed tragedy into opportunity and desperation into precise, deadly innovation.
They had turned imperfection into advantage, chaos into order, and vulnerability into a silent weapon of staggering effectiveness. Yet, more disturbing still was the humans' resilience in spirit. Even when their cities burned, even when every expectation of survival failed, they moved forward with hope. The aliens, who calculated probability down to the last molecule, could not comprehend it. They had witnessed entire families reconstructing barricades while under bombardment, engineers improvising weapons from debris mid-combat, and children guiding the wounded to safety as though instinct demanded it. The humans' ingenuity was not simply mechanical, it was emotional, psychological, and profoundly communal. From orbit, the aliens recorded in silence, their systems struggling to quantify what defied quantification. The humans were unpredictable, uncontainable, and terrifyingly effective. Each strike, each clever trap, each improvised device revealed layers of creativity the aliens could not hope to replicate. And while human casualties mounted, their determination only intensified. Humanity had weaponized its flaws, its desperation, and its limitations. The orbital monitors reflected the devastation below, yet each glowing ember of resistance illuminated a truth more alarming than fire. These humans would not simply survive, they would reshape the rules of conflict entirely. And as the first alien command ship erupted in a cascade of sparks and shredded metal, the scholars realized, in collective awe, that the humans' silent weapon, their ingenuity, was already rewriting the fate of the entire battle. Beyond the atmosphere, the void stretched like a black canvas, dotted with distant suns and drifting debris. Here, the alien fleets moved with precision born of centuries of conquest, engines humming a song of inevitability, shields shimmering with calculated confidence. Every strike, every maneuver had been rehearsed in simulations 1,000-fold. They expected the humans, fragile creatures of a fragile planet, to break under the weight of cold mechanical inevitability. Yet, from the first moment the fleet engaged, expectation collided with anomaly. Satellites, drifting silently in low orbit, blinked with activity. Alien scans revealed interference, signals rerouted, transmissions scrambled. Initially, the analysts assumed system failure. Then they noticed the patterns. Humans were using the satellites to create false readings, luring drones into ambushes, guiding their own counterattacks with signals the aliens could not trace. Debris fields, previously dismissed as collateral, became intricate mazes of traps, electrified wires, and kinetic disruptors, all calibrated to exploit weaknesses in alien designs. Every approach, every assault met with adaptation beyond prediction. Ships that should have dominated the void faltered under the subtlety of human cunning. Energy pulses redirected by improvised circuits, gravitational distortions created with hastily engineered devices, maneuvering through asteroid belts converted into labyrinths. Humanity's ingenuity transformed space itself into a weapon. Observers recorded ships crippled not by raw force, but by improvisation, intuition, and a seeming prescience that defied reason. It was as though humans could anticipate the aliens' calculations, reading patterns that no synthetic mind could perceive. Alien analysts trained to anticipate logic found themselves confounded. Every tactic deployed by the humans carried layers of complexity. One squadron would feint an attack, only for a hidden network of fighters to emerge from a previously dormant orbital station. Missiles aimed at human supply routes would vanish into shadows of false telemetry. Entire fleets were ensnared in traps crafted from debris and hacked technologies. What should have been a display of human weakness became a testament to unparalleled strategic improvisation. Curiosity replaced detachment. The analysts began to catalog not just military outcomes, but human psychology. They studied the communications of leaders, the messages of civilians, the orders of field commanders. Even in chaos, humans displayed coordination without hierarchy, unity without indoctrination. Civilians improvised logistics chains, leaders emerged organically in response to need.
Scientists converted wreckage into weapons or shields mid-battle. Every act of defiance, every improvisation, revealed a species whose intelligence was fluid, adaptive, and profoundly communal. The void itself became a battlefield of unpredictability. Alien cruisers, confident in superior firepower, found themselves hemmed in by energy nets, improvised EMP fields, and kinetic traps. Supply lines, thought secure, vanished into ambushes created from the very debris of destroyed stations. Satellites were repurposed to generate false coordinates. A single human hacker could reroute orbital defenses in moments, creating confusion that cascaded through command networks. Observation decks across the fleet flickered with warnings as the alien analysts' models collapsed. Probability itself seems to bend under human influence. Yet it was not merely tactics that awed the observers. It was the humans' endurance, their will, their capacity to function under extreme duress. Despite losses, they adapted. Even after orbital bombardments reduced habitats to smoking rubble, humans used what remained: scrap metals, broken engines, damaged drones to reinforce defenses, create decoys, and launch precision counterstrikes. Engineers crafted devices that disrupted alien energy fields. Pilots maneuvered in ways that defied the expected laws of motion. And through all of it, coordination persisted. Humans communicated with subtle gestures, encoded signals, and improvised code, systems invisible to the alien gaze, yet effective beyond measure.
Every encounter revealed more layers. Leaders on the ground displayed foresight that seemed almost supernatural. Field commanders anticipated alien maneuvers, diverting attacks into kill zones they had not yet surveyed. Civilians reinforced supply routes, protected wounded squads, and ensured communication lines remained active. Warriors improvised offensive measures on the fly, turning lost positions into new bastions. Even children, guided by instinct and observation, contributed to survival efforts, carrying vital messages or supplies through shattered urban landscapes orbiting in microgravity stations. The alien fleet, confident in calculation and machine precision, began to waver. Awe mingled with fear. This was no longer a simple engagement of combatants. It was an education in unpredictability. Humans did not fight like any species the analysts had encountered. They did not rely solely on strategy, on hierarchy, on brute force. They fought with creativity, with intuition, and with the uncanny ability to anticipate variables before they existed. It was as if the void itself obeyed them, bending to their will, shaping space into a weapon and a shield simultaneously. Sensors tracked human improvisation with growing alarm. Orbital scanners captured new constructs appearing in moments. Turrets cobbled from wreckage, drones turned into decoys, energy nets cast across attack vectors. Ships crippled by human ingenuity drifted, waiting for repair or repurposing. Entire battle plans designed by alien command were rendered obsolete by a single unexpected move. And yet, humans never hesitated. They remained fluid, adaptable, relentless. As the battle stretched across orbit and beyond, alien admiration turned to unease. To underestimate humanity was not merely foolish, it was dangerous. Their collective will, their ingenuity, and their capacity to adapt transcended technology, strategy, and every calculation the analysts had ever trusted. They were not merely surviving in space, they were shaping it, turning vulnerability into strength, desperation into innovation. Each countermeasure, each improvisation, each act of defiance demonstrated that the human's potential could not be contained. And in the midst of the chaos, as starships faltered and debris clouds churned in microgravity, a chilling realization emerged. Humanity's will was not bound by planetary limits. It was uncontainable, unpredictable, and utterly relentless. The aliens, for the first time in centuries, questioned the assumptions that had guided their dominance. In the silent void between stars, they sensed a force more powerful than any weapon, something raw, inexhaustible, and utterly alien in its logic. The humans, battered yet unbroken, orchestrated another maneuver. The aliens watched with a mixture of awe and terror. Every strategy they had relied upon, every prediction, every calculation, teetered on the edge of failure.
The void itself had become a proving ground, and the humans, inexplicably, were the masters. The scholars realized then that underestimating this species was a mistake that could cost more than fleets, it could cost entire civilizations. And as the first alien frigate exploded, torn apart by a trap of human design, the void whispered its verdict. The reckoning had only just begun. When the alien armada unleashed their most devastating strike, Earth should have been reduced to a whisper of ash and fire. Orbital bombardments vaporized entire districts. The skies above smoldered with ionized debris. Oceans boiled under energy beams designed to erase life itself. From the observation decks, alien analysts watched with cold expectation, certain that humanity's reign over their fragile planet had ended. Their models had anticipated nothing else: annihilation within hours, surrender inevitable, chaos absolute. Yet the human response defied every calculation. Even as cities collapsed, even as skyscrapers bent and shattered under the weight of alien fire, humans rose. Survivors moved with an uncanny coordination, salvaging what remained of infrastructure and technology, repurposing shattered drones, damaged energy conduits, and broken vehicles into tools of survival. Entire neighborhoods became hubs of resistance, each building a fortress, each alleyway a strategic artery. Engineers jerry-rigged power systems, rerouted energy flows, and converted civilian vehicles into rapid response units. Civilians joined in the effort, without orders, without instruction, guided only by instinct and necessity. From the alien perspective, it was incomprehensible. How could a species so fragile endure such overwhelming destruction and still maintain morale, creativity, and leadership? How could they coordinate efforts when the very fabric of their cities was ripped apart? Reports streamed from orbital sensors noting remarkable phenomena: children guiding injured comrades to safety, engineers improvising complex energy systems in the ruins of skyscrapers, soldiers coordinating ambushes with precision rivaling their most advanced AI. Human survival was not a matter of biology or armor, it was determination, ingenuity, and a communal will that no alien system could model or predict. Strikes intended to crush human resistance often backfired. A salvo aimed at a makeshift energy grid instead triggered a chain reaction that disabled alien drones and cut off orbital targeting for hours. Explosions that should have obliterated supply lines revealed hidden caches of salvaged equipment, transforming devastation into opportunity. Every calculation of probability collapsed under the humans' adaptive creativity. They were not merely surviving, they were thriving. Every wound, every loss became a catalyst for improvisation, every disaster a blueprint for the next triumph. Observers recorded extraordinary acts of resilience.
In one ruined city, a collapsed transit hub became a command center. Engineers used scrap materials to construct communication arrays that linked districts previously isolated by destruction. Soldiers, wounded but unbroken, used improvised weaponry and barricades to hold off alien patrols. Civilians served as couriers, carrying messages and supplies through fire and rubble, often improvising tools to navigate hazards that should have been insurmountable. Even children contributed to survival in ways that defied prediction, demonstrating awareness, courage, and instinctual coordination far beyond their years. Alien sensors noted a pattern that defied comprehension. Humans did not operate under rigid hierarchy. Leaders emerged organically, as dictated by circumstance, rather than through protocol or authority. Decisions were decentralized, fluid, yet synchronized with an almost supernatural coherence. The species' resilience was a living network, an emergent intelligence that adjusted instantly to losses, obstacles, and chaos. The alien fleet, confident in calculation and technological superiority, began to falter in response. Ships intended to clear cities encountered improvised traps. Orbital bombardments missed targets because humans anticipated trajectories, feeding the aliens' own predictions back into their systems to create confusion. Fires raged across the landscape, yet they illuminated not despair, but ingenuity.
Survivors built temporary shelters, reinforced with debris. They created water purification systems, energy generators, and defensive barricades, all in the midst of chaos. Communication lines, both analog and digital, were restored faster than alien engineers could sabotage them. Human adaptability transformed the battlefield itself into a weapon, as if every loss had been anticipated in some unfathomable calculus of survival. By nightfall, the planet glowed not with surrender, but with defiance. Small clusters of lights marked centers of resistance. Smoke and fire formed a chaotic pattern, yet within it, coordination thrived. Humans navigated collapsed streets, repurposed technology, and devised counterattacks that exploited the aliens' own overconfidence. Entire new fortifications appeared overnight, built from ruins and debris, standing as monuments to resilience. Each sunrise brought recovery, innovation, and renewed determination. Alien analysts began to document the phenomenon with increasing urgency. They were no longer merely recording battles, they were chronicling the essence of a species whose adaptability, courage, and unity bordered on myth. The human's will was indomitable, a force that could not be measured in algorithms or simulations. Even the most destructive strike only revealed a deeper layer of resilience. When infrastructure failed, humans improvised. When numbers dwindled, strategy evolved. When hope should have faltered, it grew stronger.
In orbital observation, the aliens realized a terrifying truth. This species, forged by a planet that demanded constant struggle for survival, could not be conquered through technology, numbers, or brute force alone. Every effort to subdue humanity revealed its capacity to endure, innovate, and strike back in ways that were both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Every defeat created the seed of another victory. By the end of the first cycle of bombardments, entire human communities had reorganized into functioning units of defense and counterattack. Engineers repaired power grids. Scientists redirected energy from destroyed facilities to reinforce strategic nodes. Civilians acted as multi-purpose agents, guiding supplies, aiding the wounded, and maintaining communication lines. Even as the aliens claimed victory, it slipped further from their grasp. Humanity's spirit had transformed defeat into opportunity, devastation into infrastructure, chaos into coordinated action. The scholars observed in silent disbelief as children led the injured through rubble, as soldiers held ambush points with improvised shields, and as entire districts turned devastation into tactical advantage. Each act of defiance built upon the last, creating a tapestry of resistance that no weapon could dismantle. Humanity was more than survival, it was creation in the midst of destruction, a force of will and ingenuity that reshaped the battlefield itself. And as night fell across the scarred landscapes of Earth, a quiet, almost invisible pattern emerged. The aliens, trained to dominate, realized the planet had not merely survived, it had adapted. Fires glowed like veins of life across ruined cities, illuminating a species that refused to die, refused to yield, refused to surrender to expectation or calculation. From the observation decks, the alien scholars recorded one final note, a conclusion that chilled even their most seasoned minds. This species, fragile in body yet unbreakable in spirit, could never be fully conquered. The Earth itself had become a testament to resilience, courage, and unity. And in that truth, the galaxy would learn that humans were not merely survivors, they were forces of nature, capable of defying annihilation, reshaping reality, and rising from ashes that should have consumed them. The Armada, once confident of finality, paused in the void, witnessing not defeat, but evolution. Humanity's counterstrike was not yet complete, and the alien fleet sensed it. The day Earth refused to die was only the beginning. Decades had passed since the alien fleets first observed Earth. Generations of scholars had cataloged wars, studied societies, and mapped every conceivable variable of human existence. They had attempted to reduce the species to a framework, probabilities, behaviors, strategic patterns, cultural norms, but all efforts failed. Human behavior defied classification.
Every model collapsed under the paradoxes of flesh and spirit, fragility and resilience, empathy and ruthlessness. The analysts, long accustomed to the predictable, the algorithmic, now confronted a species that operated simultaneously on instinct, intellect, and emotion. Humans could improvise engineering marvels from rubble one moment and then sacrifice entire squads to save strangers the next. They rebuilt cities in weeks after total annihilation, orchestrating logistics with a fluidity that defied planning. Every act seemed contradictory, yet cohesive. Compassion interwoven with calculated ruthlessness. Endurance paired with creativity. Improvisation anchored by a fierce philosophical resolve. The aliens recorded every anomaly with clinical precision. Entire populations would move as a single organism in moments of crisis, guided not by hierarchy but by intuition and shared purpose. Leaders emerged organically, civilians improvised defense networks, and children displayed awareness, courage, and instinct beyond their years. The species' weapons were not confined to matter or energy. They were embedded in culture, in story, in history, in empathy, and in unbreakable resolve. Attempts to simulate human behavior, to anticipate their reactions in any context, failed with humiliating regularity. Algorithms trained to predict outcomes faltered when humans improvised. Probability models collapsed when civilians turned devastation into opportunity. Battle plans evaporated when communities, armed with nothing but ingenuity and will, outmaneuvered fleets, fortified ruins, and redirected energy systems. Every encounter reinforced the inescapable truth. Humans could thrive anywhere, adapt to anything, and transform despair into power. The scholars began to document not only actions, but philosophy. Humans approached survival as more than biology. It was emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. The species drew strength from memory, from collective history, from the bonds between strangers, and from the small rituals of life that persisted even under bombardment. Humans fought not merely to live, but to preserve meaning, to protect one another, and to assert identity in the void of annihilation. Every report contained contradictions the aliens could not reconcile. A single squad would simultaneously display strategic calculation and reckless courage, improvisation and long-term planning, self-preservation and self-sacrifice. Populations would mourn in one district while orchestrating audacious counterattacks in another. The species' responses were never uniform, yet always effective. To the aliens, the humans were a force of nature wrapped in paradox, an organism whose resilience could not be quantified. Observation revealed the profound psychological architecture underlying these actions. Humans drew motivation from empathy, from love, from memory, from ideals larger than themselves. A destroyed hospital became both a sanctuary and a tactical hub.
A scorched city block transformed into an improvisational workshop for engineers, soldiers, and civilians alike. Even amidst despair, creativity flourished, and human ingenuity reshaped devastation into a tool. It was as if the very act of enduring tragedy strengthened the species' capacity for innovation. Alien scholars attempted to produce manuals to condense observations into predictive texts. Every attempt failed. A single example, a city rebuilt from ashes in under 3 weeks, a population coordinating defenses across multiple districts while communicating via improvised signal arrays, could not be generalized. Patterns existed, yes, but not in the predictable sense. Patterns were cultural, psychological, and philosophical, intertwined with spirit and resolve. Humans were both fragile and terrifyingly resilient, both ordinary and extraordinary, both irrational and preternaturally calculating. Acts of selflessness and ingenuity continued to astound the observers. Entire units willingly sacrificed themselves to draw enemy forces away, enabling civilians to escape devastation. Children delivered messages across active combat zones, guided by instinct and observation.
Engineers repurposed destroyed infrastructure into functioning defensive systems. Communities turned tragedy into inspiration, festivals of survival emerging amid rubble and ruin, reinforcing morale and unifying purpose. Each act created ripples of influence, shaping subsequent events in ways no alien model could predict. The aliens began to understand that they were witnessing more than survival. They were witnessing a philosophy of existence. Life was not merely preserved for its own sake, but as an expression of agency, creativity, and empathy. Humans weaponized imperfections, transforming chaos into opportunity, suffering into motivation, limitation into strategy. Every catastrophe catalyzed action, and every active action reinforced the species' cohesion. Reverence mingled with fear in the alien observation decks. They could no longer claim mastery over this species. Military superiority, technological dominance, predictive algorithms, all were insufficient to anticipate, much less control, human behavior. Every encounter, every analysis, every battle reinforced the singular conclusion. The humans were extraordinary because they could not be reduced to logic. Probability, prediction, and modeling faltered in the face of will, spirit, and creativity. By the end of decades of observation, the alien scholars abandoned attempts at codification. Manuals were discarded, simulations erased, projections rewritten to note the futility of prediction. Instead, the species was cataloged qualitatively: extraordinary, indomitable, paradoxical, adaptive, ingenious, compassionate, ruthless, endlessly inventive, and eternally resilient. Their weapon was not fire or energy. It was imagination, collaboration, and unbreakable resolve.
In whispered reports, the analysts acknowledged a profound shift in perspective. Humans were no longer subjects of study. They were teachers in ways the aliens could never replicate. Every act, every decision, every triumph and tragedy revealed principles beyond computation. How fragility can coexist with terrifying power. How vulnerability can transform into advantage. How despair can become inspiration. Humans were not merely surviving, they were redefining the boundaries of possibility. The final entries in the records captured what the analysts could not articulate fully in their own terms. Humanity could endure annihilation, adapt to any environment, improvise solutions beyond comprehension, and draw strength from bonds invisible to alien measurement. They had weaponized not only ingenuity, but empathy, culture, and hope. To underestimate them was to invite catastrophe. To attempt to contain them was to court futility. And as the scholars gazed upon the fragile blue planet, they understood the truth that would haunt them for the remainder of their existence. They were no longer superior. Only humility remained in the face of a species that transcended expectation. Humans, in all their contradictions and brilliance, had become an enigma, a force whose full comprehension was forever beyond the reach of any observer. And in that realization, the aliens found a lesson they could never teach. Some phenomena, some lives, some spirits are beyond logic. Some forces, once awakened, are unstoppable. By the time humanity's survival had been secured, the echoes of their endurance reverberated far beyond the blue planet. Systems across the galaxy had noticed the anomaly. This fragile species that had defied every expectation, survived every assault, and transformed every catastrophe into opportunity. Reports traveled along starways and subspace conduits. Humanity was no longer a curiosity. It was a phenomenon. Those who had once viewed humans as weak, inconsequential, or easily extinguished now whispered tales of their ingenuity and indomitable will.
Alien fleets that had expected conquest found themselves humbled. Commanders recorded failures in meticulous detail, each report an exercise in disbelief. Humans had survived orbital bombardments, annihilation strikes, and technological onslaughts with improvisation that rivaled the most advanced AI, coordination that transcended hierarchy, and courage that defied probability. Every battle, every crisis, every improvised victory was catalogued as a study in unpredictability. The species could not be modeled, tamed, or destroyed. It had rewritten the rules of survival itself. The galaxy, long accustomed to domination by superior forces, now viewed humans as an anomaly, a force untethered to conventional logic. Former aggressors, those who had deployed fleets with intent to exterminate, now sought alliances. Fear and admiration intertwined in equal measure.
Entire councils of interstellar governments debated the implications. Could a species so unpredictable be guided, studied, or co-opted? Or must it simply be respected, even feared? Diplomatic overtures, cautious yet persistent, flowed toward Earth, each emissary attempting to gauge the humans' capacity for engagement beyond combat. From the alien perspective, humanity's approach to diplomacy was as remarkable as their survival in war. Humans extended offers of communication, trade, and knowledge with the same ingenuity that had won them battles. Strategies that had succeeded on the battlefield now informed the art of negotiation. Humans demonstrated empathy, adaptability, and tactical patience, creating relationships that balanced mutual benefit with calculated caution. Alliances formed not through coercion or intimidation, but through the demonstration of reliability, creativity, and unyielding purpose. Observers noted that humans never sought dominance for its own sake. Their victories had not been instruments of conquest, they had been acts of survival, responses to annihilation, and expressions of will. Yet by surviving, by refusing to yield, they had altered the perception of what was possible across the galaxy. Entire civilizations recalibrated their assumptions. A species need not wield the most powerful weapons to command respect or redefine strategic paradigms. Willpower, spirit, and ingenuity had become instruments as potent as any armament. In communication logs, alien diplomats marveled at the human capacity for adaptation. Messages relayed strategies, innovations, and even cautionary tales of past conflicts, offering knowledge in ways that emphasized learning over domination. The human's perspective was rooted not in aggression, but in understanding the potential for collaboration. Their approach reflected the same improvisation and intuition that had carried them through firestorms and orbital annihilations. They observed, adapted, and responded with flexibility, turning even caution into advantage. The scholars noted patterns in human interaction that eluded computation. They formed coalitions that respected diversity and independence while harnessing shared purpose. Every negotiation, every treaty, was guided by an intuitive sense of balance. Fairness, practicality, and respect for agency intertwined in a network of interactions that alien minds struggled to model. Even in victory, humans retained humility. Even in power, they remained adaptive and observant. The galaxy observed that the species which had survived annihilation without superweapons now commanded influence through ingenuity and unbreakable spirit alone. Alien fleets that had once expected swift victory now disseminated new assessments. Humanity was unpredictable, uncontainable, and impossible to fully understand. Their reputation spread, not as conquerors, but as teachers of resilience.
Across star systems, tales circulated of humans who turned ruins into fortresses, of civilians guiding armies through devastated cities, of engineers converting rubble into strategic advantage, and of leaders who emerged not from titles but from circumstance. The stories were consistent. Humans survived against impossible odds, thrived in adversity, and extended handshakes of diplomacy without losing the lessons of conflict. Reports described the subtle power of the human approach. It was not rooted in overwhelming technology, nor in sheer numbers, nor in destructive capacity. Humans reshaped the rules of engagement with courage, ingenuity, and purpose. They demonstrated that survival was an act of strategy and spirit as much as it was biology or firepower. Entire species revised their doctrine to consider resilience, adaptability, and improvisation as critical components of power. The galaxy was learning, slowly and reluctantly, that human capability could not be measured by traditional metrics. Observation decks across alien fleets filled with admiration and envy. Scholars who had once compiled manuals and predictive models now set aside their calculations in silent acknowledgement. Humanity could not be quantified, only witnessed. Their victories, both martial and diplomatic, were products of creativity, collaboration, and an unbreakable drive to endure. Entire civilizations began to approach the species with a mixture of respect and caution. Attempts to dominate were replaced by engagement. Attempts to predict were replaced by observation. The galaxy had awakened to the singular truth: humans were a species unlike any other. On Earth itself, the survivors reconstructed not only cities but reputations. Humanity's record of endurance became a shared narrative, one of ingenuity, adaptability, and unyielding will. Diplomatic missions carried stories of survival into the void, teaching lessons in resilience without requiring combat. Humans had learned to fight, to adapt, and to thrive, but they had also learned to communicate the essence of their triumph in ways that fostered trust, alliance, and shared understanding. Even as technology and infrastructure recovered, the true legacy was cultural, philosophical, and strategic. Alien logs reflected a mixture of awe, fear, and humility. They noted the paradoxes. Humans were simultaneously fragile and terrifyingly capable, small in mass yet monumental in influence, unpredictable yet consistent in resilience. These observations redefined concepts of power and survival across multiple civilizations. The galaxy had witnessed a species that could confront annihilation, adapt to incomprehensible challenges, and extend both collaboration and diplomacy with equal mastery. In the final observations, analysts recorded the human impact on galactic consciousness. They had survived fire, war, and despair not by dominance, but by ingenuity, not by destruction, but by adaptation, not by fear, but by will.
Former aggressors no longer approached Earth with hostility, but with respect and a desire to learn. Humanity's victories were not measured in planets conquered or fleets destroyed, but in the reshaping of expectation itself. And as the first coordinated human embassies arrived in alien systems carrying knowledge, culture, and innovation, the galaxy understood that a fundamental transformation had occurred. Humanity had awakened more than a species. It had awakened a principle. That will, spirit, ingenuity, and courage could alter the fabric of reality, redefine strategic paradigms, and awaken civilizations to possibilities previously unimagined. From the alien perspective, the final conclusion was inescapable. Humans could never be predicted, tamed, or defeated. Their survival had rewritten cosmic rules. The galaxy now understood that victory, resilience, and influence could coexist without domination, and that one species, born of a fragile world, had illuminated the potential for life itself to transcend expectation. And so, the observers recorded their final note, a sentiment as reverent as it was fearful. The species that had risen from ashes, survived annihilation, and redefined the boundaries of possibility, had awakened the galaxy. Their victory was not in destruction, it was in demonstration. Their presence altered strategy, diplomacy, and philosophy across the stars. And as they looked to the void, humans would continue to thrive, innovate, and inspire, unbound by expectation, unbroken by adversity, and unparalleled in will. The galaxy had been awakened, and it would never be the same. Decades after the fires of war had scorched cities and the void had trembled under fleets of alien aggression, humanity returned to its world. The scorched landscapes, once symbols of near annihilation, became canvases for renewal.
From the orbital observation stations, alien analysts watched in reverent silence. Humans moved with a measured, quiet purpose, rebuilding societies, restoring infrastructure, and fostering communities, not in haste, but with an elegance born of hard-earned lessons. There was no arrogance, no triumphalism. The victories achieved across fire and destruction were not flaunted. They were internalized, transformed into knowledge and philosophy. Alien scholars recorded acts of rebuilding as though observing a ritual of resilience. Engineers reconstructing energy networks from salvaged fragments, communities transforming ruins into learning centers, and cultural celebrations emerging from the echoes of tragedy. Every act carried the signature of a species that had endured annihilation and emerged not hardened by hatred, but strengthened by empathy, ingenuity, and resolve. Former enemies approached cautiously, their fleets lingering at the edges of human space. They expected defiance, perhaps even vengeance. Instead, they encountered diplomacy, patience, and instruction.
Humans shared technology, strategies, and knowledge gleaned from survival, not as tools of domination but as instruments of collaboration. Alien records repeatedly noted the ineffable quality of human engagement, a balance of courage and humility, of empathy and insight, of calculated strategy and unshakable moral compass. The species had learned to wield influence not through fear but through example. Earth itself became a symbol, a beacon of resilience visible even from distant star systems. Orbital cameras captured cities reconstructed with ingenuity, forests replanted, oceans rehabilitated, and rivers cleared of debris. Humans traveled the planet not only to reclaim what was lost, but to educate, inspire, and connect. Former battlegrounds became centers of science, innovation, and cultural exchange. The alien observers, accustomed to measuring superiority in power and dominance, struggled to quantify this kind of mastery, an influence that transcended force and technology. Reports described humans venturing into the stars with the same principles that had carried them through conflict. Exploration replaced conquest, diplomacy replaced aggression, and education replaced imposition. Ships glided silently between systems, carrying scientists, educators, and pioneers. Children learned among stars, engineers tested new methods in zero-gravity laboratories, and diplomats forged alliances guided by mutual respect rather than fear. Humanity's reach was subtle, pervasive, and transformative. In quiet corners of the galaxy, alien civilizations whispered of humanity with awe. They spoke not of weapons or fleets, but of resilience, innovation, and the paradoxical combination of fragility and indomitable will. Analysts marveled at the species' capacity to endure tragedy and transform it into opportunity, to forgive former enemies while maintaining vigilance, and to teach without coercion. Humans had mastered the art of influence not through domination, but through spirit and example. Even after decades of observation, alien scholars could not predict the species' next moves. Every decision, every act, seemed guided by a combination of intuition, empathy, and strategic insight. Communities rebuilt faster than models suggested. Innovations emerged where none had been planned, and human ingenuity created solutions to problems that had long confounded even advanced civilizations. Patterns existed, yes, but they were philosophical, moral, and psychological rather than strictly logical. Humans had turned survival into an art form, an expression of will that no algorithm could replicate. The galaxy watched as humans shaped the destiny of entire worlds, not with weapons or force, but with courage, collaboration, and unyielding determination. Where others imposed order, humans inspired it. Where others crushed opposition, humans created opportunity.
Alien fleets adjusted their doctrines to account for the species' subtle yet transformative influence, realizing that raw power alone could not define supremacy in the presence of a species that had mastered the art of resilience. And in the silent corners of observation, the scholars recorded the ultimate lesson. Humanity's spirit was unstoppable.
It could survive fire, war, and despair, adapt to any challenge, innovate in the midst of destruction, and teach even the most advanced civilizations the meaning of perseverance, courage, and empathy. The human spirit, analysts concluded, was not merely a measure of survival. It was a force capable of shaping civilizations, inspiring allies, and redefining the possibilities of life itself. From Earth to the stars beyond, humanity's quiet triumph was clear. They had endured, adapted, and risen, not through sheer force, but through mastery of will, ingenuity, and collaboration. Every act of rebuilding, every journey into the void, every shared lesson with former adversaries underscored the truth that had become undeniable to all observers. Humans were not just survivors, they were architects of a new paradigm, a species whose resilience, spirit, and ingenuity set the standard across the galaxy. And so, the alien analysts closed their records with awe and humility. Humanity had won not by firepower, not by conquest, but by something far greater, a quiet, unyielding triumph of spirit that could not be measured, contained, or defeated. Earth glowed beneath them, a living testament to the species' indomitable will, while ships glided into the stars, carrying the legacy of a civilization that had endured every trial and transformed every challenge into opportunity. The galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented, and in every whispered report, in every recalculated model, the conclusion was the same. The human spirit was an unstoppable force, one that could shape the destiny of entire worlds, inspire civilizations, and leave a mark upon the cosmos that no weapon, fleet, or calculation could erase. Humanity had triumphed quietly, but in doing so, it had changed everything.